Hi and welcome to the Dissect with Me series on the C-Labs channel. Today, what we're actually going to be doing is continuing where we left off last time, and that was the inguinal canal. Last time we covered the trunk, which was this region right here, but now we're actually going to focus on this region right around here, so just down here, so below the belt. And the first thing is that I'm going to mention is we've got all these muscles that we covered last time. So like the transversus abdominis, internal oblique, external oblique. There's only just one more muscle, and this one muscle is called the pyramidis muscle, and that's located right around here. Let me just grab another pen. Right around here. Let me just get that up down. Right around here. Just near the pubic crest, and this muscle, the pyramidis muscle, what it does is got a very small function, but the linea alba right here, it actually contracts it, and it sort of tenses the abdomen. Is one of the anterior abdominal wall muscles, and it's only present in around about 80% of the population. Its blood supply would be the inferior epigastric artery, and it's around about 10 centimeters in length. And in terms of like its nerve supply, it would be supplied by T12, which is right around here. Well, it'll be just above here, and then the nerves would come down and sort of supply the muscle. There's also one other muscle to mention, that's the cremaster muscle, but we're going to go into that in just a short moment. We're going to go into that, but first we need to talk about what the actual inguinal canal is. And the inguinal canal is simply a sort of exposed area of the lower abdomen, so just around here, and it's sort of like a little tunnel that carries different things in both males and females. It sort of constitutes to what their reproductive organs need, or what they would carry basically. So the inguinal canal in like this simplified diagram right here, it sort of is like is a channel, and in each person it cover two different things. In males it would carry the spermatic cord, and in females it carry the round ligament, but they're the two main basic structures of each of each gender, each sex. But before we get into that, we're just going to go over like what actually the inguinal canal looks like, and what sort of constitutes its layers. If I just go down a second, we go down to here, we can see that on a sort of anatomical, like a dissected specimen, it look a bit like this. It's sort of like a channel that goes down, and it'll be like a little open area from the bottom of the abdomen. And there's another name for this, it's called the Hasselbalch's triangle. On this diagram, it's just down here, and that's that highlighted. And what it basically has is two openings. So it has a superficial opening and a deep inguinal opening. When you cut open the abdomen, you'll be able to see the superficial inguinal canal, and depending on whether it's a male or female, what comes out of it is different. So the superficial sort of opening will have the round ligament in females, and it'll have the spermatic cord in females. And another way to identify is actually has this inguinal ligament, which goes over the sort of the pelvic bone, the anterior pelvic rim, and that sort of glides down, and the anterior inguinal, well, the anterior sort of ring, the superficial inguinal ring will just be at the bottom right here, and the inguinal canal will sort of follow it right down. But the inguinal canal also has a lot of layers to it as well, and we're just gonna go over that right here. So when you open the specimen, the first part of the sort of tunnel, and this tunnel is about to about 4 centimeters long, small little tunnel. But the first part you'll see is here the superficial inguinal ring and the spermatic cord sort of coming out of it. And you also see the inguinal ligament, which you can use as a sort of guide, and the external oblique aponeurosis, so the white fibrous tissue, basically the tendon of the external oblique, that will sort of come down to the middle. And then when you cut that layer, you'll see the internal oblique, and you can see a bit more of the inguinal canal. In males, it'll usually be the spermatic cord that you can see. And when you cut just below that, you can finally see the rectus sheath, and then you'll be able to see the actual entrance to the tunnel, which is the inguinal, deep inguinal ring. And the top usually has transverse fascia, or the transversus abdominis, and the internal oblique muscles as well, the transverse abdominis. So that'll be like sort of the roof of the tunnel. That'll be right here. And then you've got the anterior wall, which is what's coming up out in front. So that'll be all the sort of the white fibrous tissue coming over. That'll just do that a different color. So that'll be just down here, coming over right like that. And then you've got the floor, which will have the inguinal ligament and the lacunar ligament, which is also just another ligament that sort of comes down at the bottom. And on the posterior wall, you've got the transversalis fascia, so that's basically all the transverse muscle, transverse abdominis muscles, muscular sheath that would be like sort of running at the back of the tunnel right around here. Badly drawn diagram, but these diagrams kind of show it a lot more better, and it shows what the inguinal canal sort of encompasses. And now if we go over to what the contents of the inguinal canal are, and what it really carries, you can see that there's a spermatic cord, and just behind the spermatic cord you'll actually have the conjoint tendon, which is right here. It's just a small tendon that comes down. It's basically the aponeurosis, or the sort of like the white fibrous part of the transversus fascia. So that'll sort of come down and it'll become the conjoint tendon. So you've done the Hasselbalch's triangle, and we've got the spermatic cord done. But there's some more contents within the spermatic cord that you should know about, so we're just going to go over that now. So like in males, the way the inguinal canal is developed is a lot more different than it is in females. So going back to like the spermatic cord and stuff, it'll be developed in a different way. So in the embryology, so like when the embryo is developing, the testicle will sort of come through the peritoneum, and it'll be gliding down, and it'll come through the fascia, so basically all the muscle walls we've talked about in previous videos, and it'll come down, and it's sort of guided down by this thing called the gubernaculum, and then that will sort of tense, and it'll bring the testes down, and then eventually it will look like this. And the tunica vaginalis, which is sort of another structure, is not really shown properly in this diagram, but it was called the processus vaginalis when you're in embryological form. But what happens is it sort of guides it down, and eventually that becomes a tunica vaginalis, which is basically like a sort of peritoneum, or like a sort of cover that covers the testes. And another thing to mention is when the spermatic cord is developing, all these other sort of veins and arteries also come in. So the spermatic cord, going back to one of the previous diagrams, so just here, the spermatic cord, when cut, will have a few different things inside it. So we're just going to go over this, and we're going to like sort of dissect the spermatic cord and see what's inside it. So imagine this is the spermatic cord. You've got all the arteries and veins. So the first artery that I want to talk about is the testicular artery. So that's going to be the artery for the blood supply of the testes. Another artery that's worth mentioning, so that's going to be here. So I'm just going to call that here. Another artery is the cremasteric artery, and that sort of does all the cremasteric muscles. It does the cremasteric muscle reflex. We're just going to go into that in a bit. And then you've got the artery of the vas deferens as well. So I'm just going to call that VA. So vas deferens artery, so VDA, sorry. So VDA, so the vas deferens artery, and then you've just got one vein that goes there as well, and that's going to be the sort of that's going to be the palpiniform plexus. It's a bit of a weird name, but basically it's just a series and network of veins that come around the testes, and it sort of drains all the blood from the testes and it takes it back to the heart. And yeah, so that's all the stuff that sort of runs in there. And in terms of nerves, we just got one nerve, a really small one, that sort of comes down, and that nerve will be the autonomic nerve, a type of autonomic nerve known as the genitofemoral nerve, and that sort of it just sort of mediates the cremasteric reflex, which we're going to go into. And then there's also a few of the autonomic nerves. There's some lymphatic tissues as well, and I'll just do that in yellow. So you've got some lymphatic tissue that also comes down. And then the last thing to mention is one last tubular structure called the vas deferens, which will be carrying the actual sperm. So it's nice to just finish off on that. So that's the vas deferens. And that is basically all the structures that run in the spermatic cord, and that's most of the male anatomy done. The only thing you need to know is about the cremasteric reflex. So the cremasteric reflex is basically any sensation that touches, anything that touches the inner thigh will provoke a reaction, and it'll cause a contraction in the cremasteric muscle, which will cause the sides, the scroti to like come back up. So there's that's basically all the cremasteric reflexes, and all these sort of mediate the cremasteric reflex. The main reason the cremasteric reflex sort of exists is like mediating body temperature, not body temperature, but mediating the temperature of the blood vessels in this area, and sort of for protection, not really protection, but like to sort of make sure that nothing as a bodily defense basically. And here this diagram kind of just shows like all the layers as well. So you've got all the testicular arteries and veins sort of coming in, and these will all be part of the inguinal canal right here. And then you've got your spermatic cord coming down here as well. One other thing that I should have mentioned as well is you have a small remnant of the processus vaginalis as well coming down here as well, but it's not much and it's pretty hard to see on most specimens. Now going on to the female anatomy is a bit more different here. So with the female anatomy, all you really have is the round ligament of the uterus that comes into the inguinal canal, and that will sort of join onto the labia majora. And the round ligament really only plays an important role in pregnancy. So what it'll do is it sort of attach the side of the uterus to the groin, and during development, fetal development, you can see in 2 months, about 8 weeks, the sort of tissue right here, the gubernaculum, the part in males, will come down, and but it won't perforate the abdomen as much, and it'll come down and it'll come through the superficial inguinal ring, and then it'll come into the labia majora, and it's basically like sort of any other ligament in the body, just holds structures into place. And yeah, that's pretty much the biggest structure in the female inguinal canal. And yeah, that would be like the biggest structure. But there's also 2 of the nerves that come down here, the genitofemoral nerve and the iliolingual nerve. So the generative femoral nerve will sort of tense this area as well, but the iliolingual nerve, which is present in both the males and females. And yes, so the main difference is just that the generative femoral nerve is and the iliolingual nerve is present in both males and females, and it basically just tenses the whatever reproductive organ that is there. So in females it'll just be the labia majora, in males it'll just be the scrotum. So that's the same thing, but in females the round ligament will be carried, and in males it'll mostly be the spermatic cord. So this sort of summarizes it quite nicely, and yeah, so you can have a look at that. Now I just want to go over the last and final part, which is about inguinal hernias and the fact that you have different types of hernias. So firstly, what is a hernia? So a hernia is basically part of the peritoneum. So basically the intestine, or it could be sometimes any other part of the peritoneum, it could just be a fluid-filled sac, usually it's the intestine, will sort of perforate through a weak point in the abdomen, and where's the weakest point in the abdomen? It'll be the inguinal canal. So what will usually happen is there'll be a weakness, and it could be due to trauma, it could be due to sports-related injury, but sometimes it can just happen on its own over time. You'll get a perforation occurring through the inguinal canal. It kind of looks like this on a specimen, but on a sort of dissected specimen, like right here, it sort of come out like this. It'd be a small sort of lump of the peritoneum just coming through the inguinal canal. And you've got two different types of hernia. So you've got the indirect inguinal hernia and the direct inguinal hernia. You can see this normal patient, the inguinal hernia is there's no sort of perforation, there's nothing happening in these two. This main similarity is perforation, but what's the difference between indirect and direct? So with indirect, by the way, both of these happen in both males and females equally, even though the development is completely different. So with indirect, it comes to the deep inguinal ring. So we mentioned what the deep inguinal ring was. If I just go to that previous place slide, the deep inguinal ring was the first one right here, and it's usually happens, it's very common, not very common, but more common than the direct inguinal hernia, and usually happen when the processus vaginalis, the thing that we just talked about, fails to sort of stitch up. So it basically is too weak, and it sort of bursts through, so it fails to fully develop. And with direct inguinal hernia, what will usually happen is the direct inguinal hernia will perforate through the superficial inguinal ring. So that's the one on the surface. So if you go back to that first place right here, you can see that this one is sort of perforates through this inguinal ring here. So the first ring that you see when you cut open the specimen, when you cut open a pro-section or whatever you want to call it, basically the human body, so that will sort of come right through here. And the direct inguinal hernia can happen over like a long time, usually in old age. It can happen through sports, trauma. It can happen through a lot of different ways, and usually both indirect and inguinal hernia require surgery to get them fixed. So with both of these, you do need surgery, and it usually requires and takes some time. Could take a couple of months for it to fully heal. There's two different types. There's reducible hernia, so it can't be pushed back in, and irreducible hernia, which can only be which remains no matter how much pressure is applied. So this peritoneal sac, it'll always stay there, and that usually happens with indirect inguinal hernia, because they, remember, when they perforate, they don't come through fully, they just appear as a lump because they're behind so much tissue, because they're coming out the deep inguinal ring. Anyway, so thank you for watching, and that's basically the whole video about what you really need to know about the inguinal ring.